In the Gospels, we get this incredible story at the end of Jesus' life. In fact, it was the night that Jesus was betrayed. In Matthew 26, the account specifically says that Jesus went to one of his favorite places to pray, the Garden of Gethsemane. The Garden of Gethsemane was literally, Gethsemane means olive press. And so it was the garden at the base of the Mount of Olives where they had an olive press in a garden. And this is where they would press all the olives to get the oil for ritual practice within the temple. And it was this place that Jesus really loved, and he would retreat here regularly to pray. We've seen this on multiple occasions throughout the gospel already. But on this night, he goes there with a heavy heart. He knows what's coming before him. He knows that one of his own 12, who he had cared for and loved for 3 years, was going to come leading a crowd to arrest him and to put him on the cross. And he asks his 3 closest disciples to sit with him and to pray with him, to keep watch. And then he goes a little bit further beyond them. And then it says, and he fell on his face. I know in my life, I've had lots of times where I've fallen. Sometimes it's been because of my own mistakes. Sometimes it's been because of situations around me that I can't bear or I can't handle. Sometimes it's been physically as I've fallen down and scraped my knee throughout my life or banged my elbow or whatever. And so I can sympathize to a degree with the weakness and the limitation that would cause you to fall. But I can't really sympathize with the weight and the heaviness that was on Jesus that night. And yet when we see him fall on his face, he prays a prayer. And the prayer is that God, if the God the Father would be willing to take this cup that he's about to have to drink, the cup of judgment on the cross, from him, then Father, let's work another way. But ultimately, he chooses the way of trust, and he surrenders his will to the Father's will and says, but not my will be done, your will be done. So in the midst of this incredible weight, in the midst of this pain and suffering that he was already beginning to experience, in the abandonment of all that he knew and held dear, he trusts himself to his Father. I know that when difficult things come our way, it is really hard in those moments to trust, and yet those are the most pivotal times for us to cast our trust upon the Lord. God has proven, after all, that he is trustworthy. Just that story alone of Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane should lead us to recognize and know that we are not, or that we do not serve a God who is a stranger to our pain, to our weariness, and to our struggles. He's there. He's in the midst of it. And he fell on his face in the garden. I've been there to that garden, or the place they traditionally believe was the garden, and I've led a group of our church members there, and I've talked to dozens of other people who have gone there throughout the years, and all of their experiences are very similar. There's something untangible and unexplainable that you feel when you're in that garden, in that space, recognizing the weight of that night, the weight of what Jesus did for us. So in this season, as we're in the middle of the unknown, in the middle of a crisis, in the middle of fear and doubt, in the middle of struggles and obstacles and poverty and health and death and loss of all kinds, as we fall, would we make the same choice as Jesus and pray a prayer casting our trust in a God who we know is good and who we know will work to bring good to those who love him? We're going to come back tomorrow and conclude our series on trust, but I'm praying for you all that you all are able to surrender your will to the Lord, trust in him, and come to know him better day by day, even in the midst of this crisis. We'll see you tomorrow.